It seemed like there was finally hope for America. The heavy storm clouds of war were parting, and the sun was shining through. But on that fated day, it was as if a strong wind suddenly blew in a violent thunderstorm that shook the ground and cracked the sky with lightning. President Abraham Lincoln was dead at the hands of John Wilkes Booth. About a month before the assassination, General Napoleon J.T. Dana caught wind that there may be an attempt on the president's life, and arrested John Wilkes Booth and David Harold when they refused to state their names at one of the checkpoints put in place along the roads going into Washington, D.C. However, they were soon released, giving Booth the opportunity to go to Lincoln's second inauguration on March 4, 1865. Booth said he regretted not killing Lincoln right then and there, but his time came soon enough. April 14, 1865. Lincoln was at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., watching the comedy Our American Cousin. Being a popular stage actor, John Wilkes Booth was very familiar with Ford's Theater, as its patrons were with him. These circumstances allowed Booth to make his way to the second level of boxes, where Lincoln was seated along with Mrs. Lincoln, Major Henry Rathbone, and Rathbone's fiancée. With the audience erupting with laughter, he crept into the box and pulled the trigger of his Derringer pistol just inches from the back of Lincoln's head. Lincoln slumped over as if hit from behind with a sledgehammer. As Booth rushed to the front of the box, Major Rathbone grabbed him, pulling him back from the rail. Booth quickly overpowered Rathbone and was able to draw his knife and slash him in the process, buying him enough time to jump out of the box onto the stage 12 feet below. Booth, limping his way across the stage on a now broken leg, yelled, "Sic semper tyrannis, the South is avenged." He fought his way to the exit and mounted a horse waiting in the alley behind the theater. He was gone before the rapturous laughter turned to horrified screams. 10 days after the assassination, with Booth now on the run, Lieutenant Edward Doherty was charged with the task of pursuing John Wilkes Booth and David Harold. He was specifically ordered by Secretary of War Stanton that Booth be captured alive, so as to see how deep the conspiracy ran in the ranks of the Confederates. By operating under aliases, sleeping on riverbanks, staying with sympathizers of the South, or people who had not yet heard of the assassination, they were able to keep a fairly low profile. However, General Dana and his party out of Fort Baker, and Lieutenant Doherty with his party were hot on the trail of Booth. It took only 2 days for Doherty and his party, accompanied by 2 detectives, Luther Baker and Everton Conger, to track Booth and Harold south through Maryland, across the Potomac and Rappahannock rivers, all the way into Virginia. There the trail ended at the Garrett family farm, where Booth and Harold were seeking refuge. As the Garrett's barn was surrounded, Booth was called upon to surrender, but since he refused and threatened to shoot any who attempted to enter, they set fire to the barn. The heat and choking smoke compelled Harold to surrender, and as he did so, Sergeant Boston Corbet fired his gun through a small crack in the side of the barn, striking Booth in the back of the head just below where the assassin had shot President Lincoln. The bullet severed Booth's spinal cord, rendering him motionless. Doherty's party then burst into the barn that was now a raging inferno and dragged his paralyzed body to the porch of the house. Doherty sent one of the party members to Port Royal for a doctor in an attempt to save Booth and bring him back for questioning. However, when the doctor arrived, he was unable to help and deemed Booth's wound mortal. Near the end, Booth whispered his last, "Tell my mother I died for my country," and asking to have his arms raised so he could see both his hands, looked upon them and uttered 2 final words: "Useless, useless." As dawn was breaking on the 26th of April, the man who infamously assassinated one of America's greatest presidents died, and thus ended the greatest manhunt in American history. For the past several weeks, I have been studying the primary source titled John Wilkes Booth, Escape and Wanderings Until Final Ending of the Trail by Suicide at Enid, Oklahoma, by W. P. Campbell, published in January of 1903. The document is a compilation of first-hand accounts from military personnel, civilians who had encountered Booth, and others who were, in one way or another, involved in the manhunt. These in-depth personal accounts cover the span of time from the month before Lincoln's assassination up until the death of John Wilkes Booth and the trial of Boston Corbett for the murder of Booth. With my eye on a career in criminal law, I gravitated to a document whose sole concern was reporting the story of one of America's most infamous criminal cases. Aside from my own personal connection, I think the general basis of this piece of history can resonate with many people of this day and age. We live in a time where we face racism, terrorists, extremists, and a future into which we are guided by leaders who not all agree with, much like Americans over 150 years ago. What we should do as principled, virtuous citizens is come together as a community with the right mindset and openness to hear each other and have faith in one another. When we do this, we come closer to our humanity and closer to achieving peace.